Okay, let's get rolling. Thank you everyone for joining us. It's a beautiful Wednesday afternoon here in Boise, Idaho. We're excited to be able to bring you this very first Plex Track webinar. So we wish you a healthy and safe afternoon or morning wherever you're joining us from. We're excited to be able to share with you a little bit about what we've been up to here at Plex Track in our first webinar called Plex Track Like a Pro. We're excited to be starting off our webinar series and intend to bring you webinars every month, if not one, maybe two a month, depending on how much content we can fill. But we will definitely be planning on bringing you a webinar every month to highlight some of the newer features and things that are on the roadmap for Plex Track so that you're all in the loop as to what we're doing and working hard on your behalf. If you're a current customer of Plex Track, we really do appreciate your business. First and foremost, we're excited that you're a customer of ours and hope that these webinars will be able to provide you insight as to what features are in place today, being able to identify functionality that you may not know existed. And if you've been with us a while, you certainly may not be aware of everything that has been put into the platform within the last 6 to 9 months. So we're really excited to kind of show off a lot of the stuff that we've been working hard on for the last several months and be able to hopefully identify some of the things that you didn't know were there. If you're not a Plex Track customer, we're really excited for you to join us today to learn a little bit more about what we do here at Plex Track and potentially how we could help solve some of your needs within your security program or your security organization. So without further ado, I will kind of get started. I am Dan DeCloss. I am the founder and CEO of Plex Track, and we are going to be talking a lot about Plex Track Like a Pro today. So how you can use Plex Track and all the different various use cases that we have available within the platform, as well as highlight some of the newer features that have been put into the platform within the last several months. So we definitely hope that it brings value to you as you're spending time out of your day, and really do appreciate that. For those of you that are not customers of Plex Track, I'll dive into just a brief overview of what Plex Track is and kind of the paradigm that we live in. So we tout ourselves as a purple teaming platform, but we really abstract that term to mean anything that is collaborative amongst red team or proactive assessments and blue team, so that the people that are in charge of defending and protecting environments. So we really try to bridge the gap on the collaboration between all the different teams within an organization and working together to streamline the workflow, streamline the remediation of security issues and tasks, as well as make it easy to collaborate. I've lived the pain on both sides of these fences, being both a red teamer and a blue teamer. And so being able to have that central touch point for collaboration, being able to write in reports quicker and easier, and being able to collaborate on those issues in real time is very valuable. And so that's some of the key use cases that we really try to adhere to, and the mission that we have at Plex Track to really make everybody do the security work better and more efficient, so that we can continue to improve the security posture of everyone as a whole. The nice thing about Plex Track is that it can be used as an internal or an external portal. So we definitely have a high amount of people using it to be able to have not only customers log into it, but also their engineers and analysts that want to be able to remediate issues. So that's just kind of a general overview of what Plex Track is as a whole. As we dive into the platform, Sean, our VP of Success, will explain in depth, how some of these key use cases come to light through Plex Track. I do want to encourage you to ask questions throughout the webinar. We have a Q&A function within the webinar panel, so definitely feel free to ask questions, and we will address those at the end. We also are going to try and keep you a little engaged, so we're going to do some polls throughout the platform or throughout the webinar. So definitely, when we post those, be sure to answer them. And like any platform, we have a lot of features and a lot of functionality, and there's definitely not everything that we can highlight in a full hour. And so we want to provide value to not only our current customers, but those that are interested in learning more about Plex Track. So If you do want to know more, you can always reach out to us individually or schedule your own demo at plextrac.com/demo. And with that, let's go ahead and get engaged and start our first poll, just to kind of get everybody's mind ready for the platform discussion on how to Plex Track like a pro. So I'm going to launch this poll, and we'll give you about 30 seconds to go and answer this poll. And here we go. So we want to know exactly, why you chose to join us today. And I see the answers funneling in. This is fantastic. So we'll give everybody a few more seconds to launch their vote, and then we will kick the presentation over to Sean. All right. Okay. This is great. Thank you, everybody, for participating in the poll. We'll provide the results of this poll at the end. So we will go ahead and end this poll. And with that, we would like to hand it over to our VP of Success, Sean Scott, to start our content of Plex Track like a pro.
Hey, great. Good day, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. This is the first time that I've ever given a webinar from a folding picnic table in an empty spare bedroom. So thanks for making it special with me. So as Dan mentioned, the core functionality of Plex Track and what it's always been about is facilitating that rapid and more effective collaboration between red and blue teams. And if you're a current Plex Track customer, the chances are that's why we started working together in the first place. But there have been some subtle enhancements that are worth review. So we're going to start today with a quick overview of some of the collaborative features that Plex Track has to facilitate purple team engagements and overall collaboration. However, over the last few years, we've also been working really hard to support two other vital use cases to handle other ways that risk is identified in your environment. Vulnerability management is the foundation of any InfoSec program, and we're excited to provide a slew of new features to support our community. Similarly, risks are often identified through the use of popular framework-based assessments like PCI and various NIST standards, perhaps the CIS-20 controls. And now Plex Track aggregates the data from these sources into the platform as well. So you really have that one-stop shopping to see and track the remediation of all the risks in your environment. So I'm going to take the screen over from Dan at this point. And give me just a moment here to bring that up. All right. So hopefully everybody can see my screen here, and I'm going to hop right into one of our organizations. And the one I'm going to be working in today, I've titled it Wild West Hacking Fest, just to remind myself to put a plug out there. We've been involved with Wild West Hacking Fest, both the first one in Deadwood and the virtual event. And we're planning on being there again in Deadwood in September, if all goes well. And if not, we're going to be with them virtually once again. So September 23rd through 25th, if you happen to be in Deadwood or attending virtually, please feel free to stop on by and say hello. So, all right, so Plex Track has made it easy for a long time for red teams and blue teams to share evidence, such as things like screenshots and even videos. And that's been a key feature that a lot of folks use as part of their evidence gathering. However, one of the lesser used features that's really quite powerful is the built-in status tracker. So for each finding in Plex Track, we have a place where the red teams and blue teams can come together and share the activities that they have been performing. Typically in purple teaming engagements, these activities are scripted out and there's going to be some back and forth. And we think, in fact, the most effective purple team activities are those that have iterative cycles through them. So in this particular example, the red team executed an activity on some DNS exfiltration. Blue team did not detect that exfiltration. Red team fired it off again, and still blue team was unsuccessful on that. Well, that doesn't have to be the end all and be all of it now, because even though we have this great way for facilitating that collaboration at the finding level, we've added a cool new feature to all of our reports, which is called our artifacts section. Our artifacts section, you can really think about it as arbitrary document storage. So in this particular example, the blue team asked the red team, hey, can you give us a hand with reviewing our snort rules? And let's see, where we might have the roles and how we can increase our detection. so that when we retest this particular activity, we're more successful in our detection and our response activities. It's really a very useful feature. And oftentimes when we talk about purple team engagements, people's minds tend to gravitate towards the enterprise, where you've got an internal red team and an internal blue team. But there's no reason whatsoever why purple teaming can't happen with a consultancy and a client. In Plex Track, we provide a role-based access control, and one of those roles is the Analyst Role, which gives you a secure way of giving your clients a much more limited access to the Plex Track platform and their data. And I've actually logged in as an analyst on this other screen, and it's subtly different but streamlined. So for this particular user, I have that Analyst Role, and this is a revamp that we just completed about 3 weeks ago. And you can see that I'm able to see my report, and I still have access to interact with things like the status tracker that we just discussed. And I can even interact by adding artifacts. When we can use this as a method of secure file transfer. We've always got to worry about clients sending us something via unsecured email that they probably shouldn't have, and trying to protect them from themselves. But it's a much more streamlined view. You can see I don't have a lot of the functionality that would indicate to me that I have editing functions. So really happy to have that in. It makes it a much more streamlined client experience. There were some concerns by some of our clients that they didn't necessarily want the analyst seeing everything in the write-ups database. So that functionality has been hidden from the Analyst Role. It's up to you if you'd still like to give that by elevating privileges, but we've really tried to lock this down so that you can feel as comfortable as possible with providing Plex Track access to your clients. So we've talked a good bit about assets already, but I want to shift gears and talk about the biggest shift that Plex Track has made probably in its history, and that has to do with the introduction of asset management. Now, if you were a client of Plex Track's back in 2019, you may recall that affected assets for any particular finding were nothing more, and actually I'll go into the editing view of this, were nothing more than a simple text field that you would fill in over in your finding details. I think it was right after description, maybe after recommendations. Well, that was helpful. However, our clients have asked us to be able to do more with that data, to be able to look at the risks, not just in the context of the vulnerabilities that exist across their assets, but grouped by the vulnerabilities that exist on each particular host or asset at this level. To deliver on this requirement, we had to create a new separate data object and a way to aggregate this information. So now when you have affected assets in a finding, you have each one of these things that has multiple attributes. These things can be generated automatically. If you import a scan into Plex Track, we're going to harvest the affected assets from that, and we're even going to tuck the raw scan results into the context of that asset. So you can come here and actually have access to that raw scan data as well. So these things are created automatically when you bring in scan results, but you can also create them manually and on the fly. So if we have test server 1, if I can type here today, we can add additional attributes such as the asset type, even its asset criticality. We can even start tagging these things today with whatever you'd like as well. And those tags continue to reside with these assets even outside the context of these reports. So I've saved that asset, and now I've added that additional asset to this long string down here of assets that we see. Sorry if I'm jumping around on you out there if you're in disadvantaged broadband land. But what's really powerful now in terms of vulnerability management is I've already shown you how we can track the remediation of findings at the finding level. But now we can track the remediation of this vulnerability at the individual asset level. So if I were to come in here and I can actually start working my way down the list of these particular assets, knocking them out like a punch card as I go through them. And now when I come in to view this particular asset, I can see where we're at in the remediation process. As I alluded to, as the assets are created, either automatically or through manual creation, they exist outside of the context of this report. And so if you were to come into a finding and you wanted to add an existing asset to the flaw, even if that asset didn't exist in this report, if it had been created prior to this and existed at the client level, I can add all those additional assets as well. So really bringing that asset management piece all under one hood and really helpful. So I mentioned a few times that we now have the ability to view these at the client level outside of the context of a client report. And so if I were to go to the client level, I now have this new purple tab. We like purple around Plex Track if you haven't noticed, where I can view my assets. And I now see a list of all the assets that have ever been detected on a scan or created manually. And I can drill down into those individual assets. And I have a one-stop shop of all the vulnerabilities that exist on this asset, and also what the remediation status of that finding is for this particular asset. I showed you when I was creating an asset that we've got the ability in that modal to add some attributes, but I can come in and populate this with additional metadata that's just going to help me out in my overall asset management. So I mentioned a couple ways to get into, or to get assets into the client, either by bringing them in a scan or creating them manually. There's actually one more way that we have as well. If you really just want to populate your client's asset inventory, you can run a simple discovery scan with Nmap and then just bring that discovery scan into here. And once you upload that, what you'll find, and I'm going to move real quick here down the list, is that you're going to have a number of assets that may not have any findings against them. They were just brought in from Nessus. But we do bring in the ports and services that were detected on them and when they were last seen. So anything that's brought in using this method is now something that you can very rapidly add to your findings because it's already been pre-populated when you're working inside of the context of a finding. So, all right, so we've talked a lot about the creation of assets from scanner data, and that's one of the primary ways in which vulnerability management is being accomplished. But let's talk a little bit about the scanner results that we can bring in. So I've moved into a blank report here, has nothing in it whatsoever. If you recall, one of the easy ways to get findings from a scan into Plex Track is you just go to add findings, and then from tools, and then you get your list of available dropdowns. And I'm going to pause here for a moment to just highlight a couple of the new additions that we have added here recently. So we've got Core Impact, which has now been added in addition to Scythe. And if you're not familiar with Scythe, please give them a check out. It's a post-exploitation automated simulation attack simulation tool. Does a really great job. Push the button, it goes to town, does that automated exploitation, and gives you some great results. But I'm going to bring in a Nexpose result here, and let me very quickly hop into where I needed to be, which is not here. Let me get to my scanner samples and my Nexpose, and I'll get to where I need to be. And actually, my apologies, that may not be the one that I'm looking for. I swear I had this all set up. All right, we'll get down to the proper file. Demo gods, gotta love them. All right, so we've got now the Nexpose file loaded up. A brand new feature that we have just added in this latest release is the ability to add tags in bulk on import. So where this could be really helpful, if you're consolidating multiple scan results into a single report, maybe from various enclaves, and you want to bring these all, but you want to retain information on where you originally brought them from. Or perhaps you're bringing in scan results to augment a manual pen test, and you want to be able to rapidly identify which of those and sort on those as well. So we'll go ahead and bring that Nexpose result in, and you'll see now that our report has been populated with all that data. Another really subtle feature that we have added in the very recent future is this filter. So if I were to come in here and say, all right, where do I have TLS issues in my environment? I start scrolling down, and I notice right away, one of those issues that we often see is multiple things that look very, very similar. And so in order to overcome that, we've added the addition of Parser Actions. I actually left my Parser Actions in place from the last time I practiced this. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk about what Parser Actions does. So Parser Actions do three things at the 30,000 foot level. Once I identify what scan tool that I want to use, so let's say Nexpose, I can then search for those things by plugin ID. So as we see, if I were to highlight TLS, and it's actually by keyword search or plugin ID, we go down the list here, I see that I have two TLS, basically TLS server running outdated versions here. And these have the same root cause, they have the same remediation steps, right? So why would I want to include both of these? I'm just creating more noise for my clients. I want to consolidate these into a single write-up. And so what I've done is I've created a single write-up called TLS servers allow deprecated SSL TLS versions. And as you can see, I have an action set against these where I have linked these. So now what you actually saw in real time as I imported that finding is that these two TLS related findings were actually mapped into this TLS servers write-up. And when we hop back into the report, you'll see that both assets are now consolidated into that single finding. There's a couple other cool things that I can do with my Parser Actions. I can also choose to change the default severity. So perhaps I believe that due to some new intel I had that this should actually be a high severity. I get a nice little toast here indicating success. I could also say, you know what, nobody in the world is ever using this cipher suite anymore. I don't know. So I just want to ignore all these, and I can do that as well. I can simply clear these things out by choosing default, and that returns them to the default status. I've also got the ability up here, tucked away a little bit, and maybe not as obvious as would like it, but if I want to see all of the write-ups that have been linked, all the plugin IDs that have been linked to write-ups in the write-ups database for this particular parser, I can simply choose link, and now I can decide if I want to clear these things out. And so maybe just for fun, I will, and we'll re-import that one, and we can see the difference between the two. So I'll move these back to the default action, and now that linkage has been removed. Something you need to understand about the Parser Actions is that Parser Actions do not apply retroactively. So if you've already pulled in scan results into a report, it's not going to go back and map those things for you. You'll need to take your Parser Actions and then re-import that scan. Something else to understand is that it's a learning module. You know, we support, I think, a dozen different scanners at this point, and each one of those organizations is constantly kicking out new plugin IDs in response to new detected vulnerabilities, new CVEs, and as those are being released, how do we keep Plex Track up to date with that? Well, every single time that you import a scan, whether in a report or you come in to this particular module and choose to import a scan here, it's adding these plugin IDs to its list of known plugins and then making them available to you. So if you've got a scan result and you know that you want to take Parser Actions, one pro tip for Plex Track is to come into this section first, bring your scan result in here, and then any new plugin IDs that are detected in that scan result will then be available for you here to take those Parser Actions on. So I'm going to hop back over to my client. We're doing this absolutely 100% backwards from how I had it flowed out, but we've got the scan result that we brought in with no Parser Actions. Let's bring in the scan with Parser Actions enabled. I'm going to go ahead and import that same scan export without any Parser Actions enabled. So we've got that there. We won't need to add any tags at this point. And now, once again, we search on TLS. Here we see those TLS version issues that we saw before. If we hop back to the scan that we originally did, you can see that those findings are no longer here, but they have been consolidated into this single TLS servers allow deprecated versions. If I open this up, you can see that I've consolidated both assets from those two disparate findings into this single write-up. So really, really powerful, great new feature. It's one that people have been asking for a long time. So we're really excited to get that out the door. So a lot of stuff's been happening on asset management, and we're going to go into discussing how we work our assessments use case in a moment. But I'm going to pause now, grab some water, and let Dan talk about our next poll question.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, so we're kind of halfway through our webinar here, and Sean's done a great job of describing some of the use cases around vulnerability management and collaboration across different teams. We're going to dive in, and hopefully you've seen some new features, or maybe haven't seen some of this before if you're a current user. But hopefully it's also sparking some more questions. We are getting questions rolling in. So like I said, we will answer these questions in the Q&A section at the end, but we are seeing them, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. But we will always follow up with you later as well. But let's go ahead and launch our next poll. We're kind of curious, what some of the things are that you're focused on for 2020 in terms of security initiatives. So we're going to just launch a poll here just to kind of see what are some of the things that are on your guys' minds as we head into the next part of 2020. So we'll give you a few minutes to answer this question here, and then we'll proceed with some more of Plex Track Like a Pro. And while some of these are coming in, there was a question I think I can field right now around deduplication. And I believe that the question is related to the fact that when you bring in multiple scans of the same source within a report, we don't duplicate that finding. So the finding stays the same, and we just add the affected assets to that list. And then if you have two reports that have the same finding and the same assets within those findings, that shows as one finding for that asset, but two instance counts. So we have a nice way to kind of help with the deduplication efforts across the different vulnerabilities at the asset level as well. Okay, so these, we've gotten a good chunk of people filling in. We'll give you a few more seconds to finalize this poll, and then we'll continue on. Hopefully you've had a little bit of a refresher with your brain to get all that good information from Sean soaked in a little bit. And so we will go ahead and end this poll now. And Sean, proceed.
Hey, thanks, Dan. So as information security professionals, we all know that a risk is a risk, no matter how it's identified. And our stakeholders need visibility, whether we identified that risk through a manual pen test, a vuln scan, or one of those framework-based assessments or audits. Those are all valid and important ways that we identify risk. And we've talked already how Plex Track supports manual pen tests and purple teaming, and how we support vuln management. But we're really excited to show off where we've done really the most of our development work in the past 4 months. And that is on adding that additional pillar of assessments and bringing that into our living risk register. And one thing you'll notice right off the get-go is if you click into assessments, we've now organized the functionality and divided it into management and workflow functions. So we have this new workflow function, this in progress and completed section. If you're an old school user of Plex Track, one of the things we got feedback on was, I can't save and return to something, or if I've already submitted an assessment, I don't have the ability to go back, make modifications and resubmit. We've cleaned all that up. We have now the ability to come in here, find the assessments that are either in progress or even ones that may have been previously submitted, and then go back to work on those immediately. Even if you've already submitted an assessment, you can modify that and resubmit it, generating a new report. So just really some things to help out the workflow. But getting into the actual management, creation and administration of our assessments. And one of the things that you're going to notice right off the bat when you're editing one of the assessments is that we've completely reskinned our user interface. Not only is it a whole lot easier on the eyes, but this reskin really allowed us to address some of the issues with performance that the people were seeing with some of those really, really large assessments that are out there. So, the value, what do we get by creating and administering a assessment in Plex Track? I mean, how are we different from SurveyMonkey, right? Well, there's two key things that we bring to the table. Number one is that we're able to, when you're creating the assessment, pre-populate under the hood, not just the question itself and the answer type, but a lot of additional data. For example, the standard recommendations that may come from authoritative sources. So this is a snippet from the CMMC assessment version 1.02 that's coming down the pipe. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of it. You know, and we were able to pre-populate all of these with the authoritative recommendations straight out of Appendix B from the NIST publication and our references. We can also add as many tags to this as we like, which, you know, tags are free. I tell people to be verbose and use lots of them because every single tag gives you an additional pivot point by which you can slice and dice your data in the analytics section, in addition to using it for grouping and sorting in your document-based exports. One thing that's fairly new is our how we modified our answer types. So we've had most of these answer types in here before, and if you're not familiar with what the different things mean, I figured I'd just take a moment to explain. So you see that there's a yes, pass, and no fail. What that means is a yes answer indicates that the respondent is compliant with the control or the question. And so that's going to result in a closed status of this control once we export that into the reports section. It's the exact opposite with yes, fail. With compliant status, if you answer something like fully implemented, once again, that's compliant and that's a controlled or a closed status. Anything beyond that is not going to be, you know, you may get in process. But the thing that we've added that's pretty cool is at the very bottom, so you got to scroll forward, is multiple choice. So now you have the ability of crafting your own multiple choice answers with as few or as many as you would like as well. We still have the option of mapping all this metadata and supporting information to write-ups in the write-ups database. That's a really helpful technique if you want to reuse, you know, some of these same questions in almost like a building block Lego type approach. So not only have we reskinned the creation of the assessments, but we've reskinned the administration of these as well. So I'm going to begin one of these assessments. You know, one thing and actually I clicked on the wrong button there. Sorry about that. When you begin an assessment, the first thing you get is a question of who is this for, right? What client or organizational unit are we actually doing this for? And the nice thing about using Plex Track as a client portal is they're not going to see all these. They're only going to see the individual client units that you have provided them access to. And here's a little Plex Track pro tip. You know, Plex Track's user interface is very, very friendly and very intuitive. And when you provision your users, your clients to use Plex Track as a client portal, it should be very easy for them to find the assessment that they want to take. However, a pro tip is if you simply copy and paste this URL and provide that to them, once they log into Plex Track, they can just navigate to that and be off to the races, no additional navigation required. But as you can see, all of the individual questions are now collapsed by default. So the users can come in, whether you're administrating or they're self-administrating, you know, they can make their responses, save those responses individually. And once again, we're going to see how the change of answer types actually impacts the status of the finding upon export. One additional cool workflow feature that we've added is this reviewer function. And so we understand that in a lot of these larger assessments, maybe once again, hundreds of questions, that often a team's going to divide some of these up. And you know, you may only be responsible for one particular category of questions in the assessment. But at the same time, there might be somebody that needs to come in and do the reviewing before this is submitted to whoever the administrative authority is. So once I've added a reviewer, which I added myself, by the way, we now get this in review function up here. And if I scroll down to the bottom, you'll note that I no longer have the ability to submit this. And I get my nice little helper text there. Hey, everybody's gotta do that. So I'm going to go ahead and approve this for submission. And now you will note that in addition to my success notification, I can now submit this assessment. So we talked, about one of the value propositions of PlexTrac being able to add a lot of that supporting information in the context of the question. But you'll notice that when we administered that questionnaire, none of that stuff was visible, and that's by design, to the respondent. So where does that information go? Those recommendations that we pulled from Appendix B. Well, all that stuff gets pre-populated into the actual results, and each control gets turned into a finding. So you'll note that we have the default recommendations, we've got the default references. You'll also note that the status of this is closed. And why is the status closed? Well, because the response was compliant. You'll also note that the status of this particular one, sorry, I went to the add update there, is in process because the response was partially compliant. So automatically PlexTrac is taking care of some of that classification for you, but you may want to modify and enrich that data. So at this point, we are working with a finding just like any other finding in PlexTrac. You can come in here, you can modify the default description and recommendations, references, you can add additional tags, and you can even enrich the data. If you want to provide supporting screenshots and code samples, if you want to identify which assets were affected, all that's available to you. So after you're complete with the enrichment and the polishing of the report, it's time to get this information out the door to your client, right? And so PlexTrac, it supports the use of custom export templates. And so I'm going to go ahead and provide an export of this using just the default template. And what do we mean default? Well, the one that you're going to see here it's just a Word document that we've taken, and then we have gingified it. We have applied Jinja 2 code to the document to pull from PlexTrac all the appropriate data that we need. So once again, this isn't being generated in HTML, it's just the docx document. And so the normal workflow with our clients is, as part of that onboarding process, we get a sanitized version of whatever your existing template is, and we help you do the coding because we don't expect you to be experts in Jinja 2. So you come in here, one nice thing is with a simple right click and update field, you can see all of those findings have now been populated and automatically paginated or mapped here. So what can we do with this template? Really anything you want. Jinja 2 is pretty powerful. We've got built-in tabulation, but we can always write the code to do custom tabulation. If you're wanting a summary of findings table, that's silly easy. We can add whatever columns you want into that. If you wanted to, get a nice little grid that mapped your maturity levels of particular controls to the remediation status, we can do that as well. And all that stuff can be done with tags and very easy. We can format the export of the detailed findings in whatever your existing look and feel is, so that it's completely white labeled, completely branded. As happy and proud as we are of our purple logo, it doesn't need to be on your documents. It'll look exactly like it does today. So happy to help you out if you're an existing customer and you're not using that, or you haven't updated your template in a while. Happy to work with you on that as well. So the last thing I want to talk about, actually there is one more thing I did want to mention while we're in a report view. We've added a lot to our bulk actions, and so if I am working on this as the InfoSec team, it's like, okay, I want all of these to be polished by Nick Saban. I can in bulk change the status of these and assign these all to whoever that particular player is on my team. And now I've taken that bulk action. I can bulk delete as well. So really, really powerful bulk actions as well. And we're always looking to add more functionality there. But now the last thing I did want to mention is the analytics. So you've seen me add tags to findings. We've talked about adding tags to our assets, and we can add tags at finding and report level as well. But ultimately, what do those tags help me do? Well, they help me identify what is it that I need to be working on today. I come in Monday morning, and even going back to the context of my other user, who is nothing more than a lowly analyst with limited privileges. They still have the ability to come in, go to the statistics section. From the available dropdown, okay, I'm only authorized to see Wild West Hacking Fest and Amazing Industries. But let me just work on Wild West, apply the filters, and now I've got my punch list. What are the most critical things that I need to be working on right now? And I can start working on those things. Maybe I want to further refine it. And it's like inside of this particular organization, I really just want to see what I need to be working on in Enclave 1, because that's where all my crown jewels are at. I can then filter on that as well, narrowing my pick list here to really get myself focused on the things I need to be remediating. Additional information that you can get in this analytics section is a breakdown by the severity. What's really interesting is if I can actually select multiple clients here, so I can add Amazing Industries, and I can start aggregating this data. And so now, not only am I getting an aggregation of my critical findings, but I can see that side-by-side comparison amongst business units of the findings by severity. I can get that aging data, and I can see what the difference is there. It looks like Amazing Industries has got some work to do in comparison to Wild West Hacking Fest. I can even look back and further in time. Okay, well, the good news is Wild West at least doesn't have anything older than 60 days. So really a lot we can do in this analytics section. And I think Brian's going to talk about one of the areas that we're really moving a lot of development effort into is a complete reskin and enhancement of this section. So with that, I've appreciated your time. Thanks for letting me wax poetic about all things that excite me about Plex Track. And I'm going to hand the con back to Dan.
Thanks, Sean. I guess I had to come off mute there. Thanks, Sean. And that was a good rundown, like we said, of Plex Track. Hopefully you gained some of the key use cases that you can provide, that we provide through Plex Track. And now I'll hand the con over to Brian to discuss what's next, as well as answer some of the questions. So definitely feel free to chime in with any questions that you have. We've got several in the hopper here that we can answer. We'll go through the questions. We'll reveal some of the things about the polls, and I think the polls actually help identify some of the things that we actually are working on the roadmap as well. And Brian will be able to kind of share some of those with you as well. So Brian, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. This is Brian Nyber. I'm the VP of Sales here at Plex Track, and I have the pleasure of closing out today's webinar. I do really want to thank everybody for attending today. We really sincerely appreciate everybody's participation. Some very thoughtful questions coming in that we look forward to answering here quickly. I do want to reiterate, if you're new to Plex Track or this is your first exposure to what we're doing, please feel free to visit the website plextrack.com/demo to request a one-on-one demonstration. Fill out the quick form. It'll email you back a Calendly link where you can self-select a time for a demonstration that works best for you. We do also offer free 14-day trials of the platform that we can arrange following a quick demonstration as well. Last thing I wanted to mention is the recording of today's webinar is going to be posted to our YouTube channel for on-demand viewing afterwards. If you weren't able to attend or there's somebody that you want to send that link on to, that'll get posted out there. So with a couple of those housekeeping items out of the way, let's turn our attention and share the results of those couple of poll questions. Really appreciate everybody's participation there. Dan, if you want to bring those up, we can talk through the results of those, and then we'll dive into some of the Q&A from the attendees as well.
Absolutely. So we had a good response of folks for question number one of why they're here. So definitely had a good distribution of current customers. So hopefully you once again, we really thank you for joining us and being a customer. And hopefully you learned some of the newer things that have been in the platform. But like we said, there's a lot there. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out about any functionality. And as you know, as customers, your feedback drives our roadmap. And so we really appreciate the feedback and want to continue to make sure that you're successful. Then several have heard about Plex Track, but want to learn more, and as well as evaluating solutions similar to Plex Track. So we hope this was also informative. And then we only had 3 people that said they were bored and had no lunch plans. So that's good. That's good. I'm glad we were able to provide some entertainment during the slowdown in your day.
You can only eat so much Jimmy John's delivery, right?
That's right. All right, and then let's dive into poll number 2. So this is very interesting, and I think, Brian, this definitely leads into some of the things that you're going to talk about on our roadmap. So we had several people that want to continue to do more purple team and collaborative engagements. Had majority of the folks interested in providing improved metrics and analytics about their security posture and their security program. And then quite a few wanting a better way to collaborate across multiple stakeholders and teams. And some are just now getting started, so they need somewhere to get some information. And several people are working on other important things, which we know there's only a certain amount of things that we can put into a multiple choice question. So, you know, we're always excited to hear about the other things that you are working on in your security initiatives. So don't hesitate if you're willing to share some of those initiatives and see how we could help. And with that, Brian, back to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Dan. So let's go ahead and turn our attention to some of the questions that have come in from attendees on the webinar. Really appreciate the questions. If we don't have a chance to answer your question live on the webinar today, we'll definitely shoot you out an email response afterwards. Really appreciate everybody's submission here. So a couple of things that I want to turn to the panelists here to go ahead and answer. There was a question about being able to support the automatic reporting via API with Burp Suite Enterprise. Integrations with all of the scanning applications that we work with today at the API level is definitely something that's on our near-term roadmap and we're working on actively today. In the meantime, we do have an open API that would allow or facilitate that type of automatic upload of scan results from Burp Suite or other applications today. Our customer success team is certainly standing by, happy and eager to work on those types of integrations with you. We recognize that integration at the API level is going to be important, and we're working actively on those types of things today. Dan, anything to add on that?
No, I think that's a great comment. Is that we do have the open API, so we support people doing those integrations automatically, and definitely integrating with our scanning providers through the API is on the very near-term roadmap for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Another question that came in from the group: what CMDB solutions can PlexTrac input data from today? Dan, I'll turn that one over to you to answer.
Yeah, so today we just support Nmap. We're working on a CSV import and just the ability to copy and paste asset lists into PlexTrac so that it automatically parses those in. We're more than happy to talk about other CMDB solutions that we can integrate with. Part of PlexTrac, being a data aggregator and facilitator of the different tools that people might be using in their programs and in their environment, is something that we're always keen on learning about. So if you have other solutions that you'd like us to work with, we're more than happy to investigate that and start getting it into place.
Yeah, that actually dovetails very nicely into one of the other questions that came in, which is about pulling in scan results from scanning tools we don't currently support today. I did mention we do have that open API, so there is a function in the platform today to be able to facilitate the uploading of results from other scanning tools that we don't currently support today. But we can certainly also look at building out parsers for other scanning applications for you. Most of the applications that you see support for in the PlexTrac platform today came from requests from existing clients. We are working on some additional integrations. I know SonarQube and Insight VM is one that are on our hit list. So please keep those suggestions coming in. We want that to be as comprehensive a list as possible. So if there's an application that you're using today that you don't see on the list, please feel free to send it our way. And we can certainly look to build those things out. Maybe the last question that we'll take live today is around the ability to add custom frameworks that allow for custom categories in the assessments module. Sean, I know this is an area that you've worked very extensively. Can you maybe talk a little bit about some of the custom frameworks that you've worked with clients on in some of those use cases?
Yeah, sure. So it's actually pretty easy for us to add those things. We're trying to build all the ones that are popular out there, but occasionally some of our clients will come from us from time to time, and there'll be one that they didn't see. And so we just be responsive. So for example, if I were to be creating I'm in my analyst, that's why I can't create a new client here. But if I'm in my assessments and I'm creating this new questionnaire, if there's a framework that you don't see, we're happy to work with you on that. For example, there's two here, TPN and FFIEC, that we created and added to the platform relatively quickly, in a matter of days. for some of our existing clients. We do have the ability to choose custom. However, that's a much more limited. It really just allows you to omit this category. So absolutely, I think it's a great feature request to allow you to build these things out. You know, at the end of the day, what these frameworks do in Plex Track is that they allow you to choose the appropriate categories and map things to those categories. So it's not real complex functionality, and absolutely, if there's something that you see, would love to hear about, or that you don't see, I should say, love to hear about it. Love to get in the platform. The more, the merrier.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate that. So in the interest of time, I want to jump to the closing section of the webinar today, and we'll get answers sent out to folks if we didn't get a chance to answer your question live here during the webinar. So wanted to share a sneak peek of some of the things that we're working on our near-term and mid-term roadmap that we look forward to sharing with you on a webinar in the near future. Just like a lot of the features and functionality that Sean shared during his demonstration, a lot of the things that we're working on have come from direct client feedback and requests from our user base and from practitioners out in the marketplace today. Our development philosophy at Plex Track does just rely very heavily on feedback from our clients, and we're always looking for ways to prioritize client feature requests. So please keep the feedback and those requests coming. We are grateful for that and look forward to an opportunity to incorporate those requests into the roadmap for Plex Track. So the first thing that I want to talk about from an upcoming feature perspective is going to be the ability to mark individual findings with either a draft status or a published status. We're especially excited about this feature because it really does keep the real-time interaction with clients and blue teams at the forefront of what we're doing here at Plex Track. So the report creator will now have the ability to mark findings as either a draft, which is the status that you're going to want to utilize when the finding is still in process. Maybe you've got more write-up work to do on the write-up on the finding. Additional evidence needs to be added, or the final polish still needs to be applied to the finding, and it's not ready for consumption by the client or the analyst. The published status, though, will allow you to turn the findings over to the analyst role, which is what you'll provision for the internal blue teams or for your clients. And they'll be able to then interact with those findings and kick off that remediation process that much faster. The consumers can see the report findings in an iterative nature, but you'll, as the practitioner, not have to worry about findings being turned over before you're ready for the clients to have access to them. The second feature that we're working on in the very near-term roadmap is SAML and OpenID capabilities to continue to support more options for single sign-on. These features are coming in addition to the options that we currently support today, things like Okta, Azure, and Google, as we continue to explore things that clients want out in the marketplace. So that's on the very near-term roadmap for release. A couple of things that are on the more midterm roadmap are significant plans to continue to enhance the capabilities in the analytics portion of the platform. Today, you're familiar with the capabilities we have to be able to slice and dice data across clients, reports utilizing the tagging capabilities that you can use at the client, report, and finding level. I'm personally the most excited about this functionality as it really unlocks the power of the platform and our positioning as an aggregated cybersecurity threat and vulnerability platform. So we'll soon be able to use asset level tagging as an additional discriminator in the analytics, and look forward to the feedback from our users on how to leverage this functionality, use cases that they come up with for ad hoc analysis, and other ways the market wants to be able to use that centralized data in various reporting needs. And then the last feature that I want to highlight today before we close things out is runbooks. This functionality has been a really popular request amongst our clients. What this is going to do is give users the ability to define a custom methodology for tests and assessments, like a pen test, for example. So users will be able to track and monitor the progress of an assessment against that prescribed methodology that they've created, and see the areas that still need to be tested. So what this is going to do is give organizations a way to run their assessments in their own unique fashion, but bring a level of consistency and ease of replicability to that process, as well as a function for oversight across all of their engagements at the same time. So these are just a couple of the features that are on our roadmap and have been driven largely by client and practitioner feedback. So again, thank you for all of the feedback that you've provided to us. With that, I want to thank everybody for attending today. We look forward to sharing these and many more features with you very soon. Please also remember that our next webinar is scheduled for Wednesday, May 13th, titled Purple Teaming Made Easy with Attack. With that, thanks everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Appreciate you attending today.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Stay healthy and safe in these pandemic times.